live or to work in the United States, nor simply for the purpose of having one. We're going to talk about that tonight. And we're going to also, I'm going to go into the regulations. I'm not going to get too deep into it. I'm actually going to read the letter from the Social Security Administration that says expressly that there's no law requiring it. And then we're going to look through it and we're going to see some really cheesy stuff in the letter that talks about other agencies, and then at the bottom it explains why they shouldn't even talk about other agencies. So we're going to get to that, but also we're going to look at the credible stuff. We're going to look at the Code of Federal Regulations and a reasonable cause waiver for an employer who can't get a number from somebody who doesn't have a number. And we're also going to look at the IRS There's actually an IRS publication. I have a little anecdote that's really neat. It's kind of miraculous about how I found the IRS publication that talks about this reasonable cause waiver and that you can hire people without numbers. Hello, or else the Social Security Administration has misinterpreted its own regulations and laws and it's lying to us. But wait, there's more. There's an I-9, the e-verification form. So e-verification, or just employment eligibility form. We're going to actually look at the form. Guess what? Spoiler, I'm going to show you where it says giving an SSN is voluntary. You're not supposed to answer the question unless they make an offer and accept you to be their employee. And then once they accept you, then you fill out the form. And when you fill out the form, it says giving the number is voluntary. Now you're already hired. And giving the number is voluntary. So that means if there's no number, no harm, no foul. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at the e-verify stuff like that. So that's what I'm going to do today. Thank you for tuning in. I think it's going to be beneficial, actually scary to you in some sort of way. So let's right away go to the Social Security letter. The Social Security letter, and I want to make sure that, yes, my other camera is on. We're going to go right to the Social Security letter. Now, this is something that somebody gave me maybe 20 years ago. Yes, really right about 20 years ago. I was given this document, and I've got a certified copy of it. So this certified copy, it's my certified copy, except I redacted the person's name. Social Security Administration could look it up because maybe I should have redacted the serial numbers. But either way, I want to look at this letter. Let's read it. Dear Mr. So and so, from the Social Security Administration, that's official. It says, this is a response to your most recent letter concerning Social Security numbers. Somebody had a question. This is what it says. The Social Security Act. Now, I got to tell you before there, I'm going to keep you on the hook. When there's a law regarding an agency and what they do, that agency is the person that courts and everybody presume is the one who can best interpret the law as it applies to this, whatever the program is. They're the guys you go to say, hey, how is this law applied? These are the experts. The Social Security Act does not require a person to have a Social Security number. They could have said period right there. Does not require a person. The Social Security Act, and actually the law with regard to Social Security and everything that's a subset of that, which include a record number. The law doesn't require anybody to have a Social Security number. But wait, there's more. It goes on and explains to live. Can you live without the number? Or, and work. That's getting a job. That's employment. Work in the United States. And, well, that could be employment or non-employment. Not working for a United States employer while you're on the land that you live on. Live and work in the United States, nor does it require a Social Security number simply for the purpose of having one. That's an official letter. We're going to get to who said it. I'll go ahead and tell you who said it right now. It's an official person. Charles H. Mullen, Associate Commissioner, Office of Public Inquiries. And it has an address. So you can follow up with that and ask silly questions. Now, what's going to happen next, I'm going to give you a spoiler again. I'm going to go to this paragraph, the last paragraph before describing where to contact people for more information. This last paragraph right here, it says the Social Security Administration has no authority to interpret or enforce the law as it applies to programs that we do not administer. That would be Internal Revenue Service, banking, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, whatever. It's none of their business. They don't know what they're talking about. Thus, we cannot comment. This is the last paragraph. They say they cannot comment on the way other federal, state, or local government agencies use Social Security numbers. Questions about the use of Social Security numbers by other government agencies should be directed to, and then you can get more information there. So they don't have the authority, it says, have no authority to discuss everything else. So keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to go through this letter pretty in detail because that was the theme of this conversation. But wait, just stick in there with me because I'm going to actually show you the employment forms that say giving the number is voluntary, and they can't give the number. They can't fill out Section 1 of the form until after they're given an offer of an employment. They've got to be approved. This whole number issue is not supposed to come into play or interference with the working relationship. There should be no discrimination on your election under the 9th Amendment or First Amendment or whatever to elect to not participate in the voluntary program. And we're going to show how that works out here. By the way, I'm selling nothing. What's this guy's angle? It's pure information. So here we go. Look what the Social Security number does, or association, or agency, administration, says about things that they just told us that they're not allowed to talk about or have no authority. For example, in the second paragraph, the Internal Revenue Code 26 USC 6109 and applicable regulations, and 6109, I can tell it right off the top of your head, 6109 of the 26 USC United States Code, that's a statutes put into a United States Code that people get to or read it without fumbling through congressional records, right? So the United States Code, the tax code is we call it Title 26, Section whatever, 6109, talks about identification numbers. Thus, there's going to be a corresponding 26 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 301, Treasury Department stuff, point whatever. So the point will be 6109. It corresponds to the tax code, the United States Code. And the Code of Federal Regulations is the secretary of the executive department taking that statute and fleshing it out into a little more practical terms. If the code says this, then the practical application that we need to do to enforce the law is so they get a little more specific. So it tells you here that 6109 require a person to get. Now that's not true. This is a lie. Now, of course, they did a caveat. Oh, we have no authority to discuss it. It says require a person to get and use the Social Security number on tax documents and to furnish the number to any person, etc., such as an employer or a bank that is required to provide the Internal Revenue Service information about payments to that person. That's an absolute bogus, complete nincompoop lie. Because, guess what? I've got the tax code up here. Title 26, Title 26 tax code, annotated. I've got it up there on my shelf. Not behind me. It's on that shelf. I've read it. Guess what? There's no place that requires you to do it. But I can't show you that it doesn't require it because we'd have to read every volume, right, and show you that it doesn't exist. So there's penalties for failure to do so. Actually, there's no penalty anywhere in law, anywhere, for you're not getting a Social Security number. These guys are speaking without authority. There are penalties to do so. The IRS also requires employers to report Social Security numbers with employees earning, okay, if you have one. That's the point. If you have one. You don't have to go get one. Here we go. And you'll see how this works out because you're going to see when you fill out the forms, it's going to tell you it's voluntary. So they must be including social security numbers. The other thing is, like, and again, I don't want to get into too much. We'll do another talk on some of these things. This is prompting me to say, let's do a show later specifically on this paragraph and connect the dots that these guys are just spouting off, because they believe it. Whoever typed this believed this to be true. But what they have the authority to speak on is the first paragraph, not this. It goes on to say requirements for including social security number as taxpayer identification number on individual tax returns made by employers, banks, etc. Of the Treasury. Anyone who has questions about those things should contact the IRS. They're not too candid. They kind of evade the question. The requirements, let's see. So the last paragraph. For your further information, the Tax Reform Act of 1976 permits state and local governments to use social security numbers in administering their tax, public, etc. Driver's licenses, vehicle registration. In fact, it gets a little scarier than that. Is if you go to section 666, it mentions it. For example, federal law at United States Code section 666, paragraph A13A, requires applicants for various state licenses or documents. It's actually professional license, occupation license, recreational license, a driver's license, or marriage license. Put a social security number on the application. That's a completely different discussion. I have to do a show on 666 someday when I grow up. So that you could never have a profession, occupation, get married, or drive a car, or even go fishing unless you confess this interesting number according to section 666 of the Federal Health and Human Services Code. So examples of such licenses or documents include, but are not limited to, it goes on. It says driver's license, professional license. Okay, I had the statute memorized. I don't know why I had 666 memorized, but there it is. So it goes, and it's the deadbeat dad statute. So someday I'll do a show just on that paragraph. The Privacy Act regulations use social security numbers by government agencies. And it says agencies are required to disclose now this is important. Before we go on to the next thing that's very exciting to show you, in fact, we'll go to the federal regulation. We're going to see where there's an accommodation for the fact that there's no law, as these guys said, that requires you to live or to work or to simply have one in the United States. If that's true, we should see something showing, or that's an indicator that really applies. It's legit, notwithstanding everybody's presuppositions. So it says on the Privacy Act, it says agencies are required to disclose the authorizing law or regulation. If the request has no legal basis, the person may refuse to provide the number and still receive the agency's services. So that goes for somebody who's got a social security number, but there's no particular authority commanding it as a mandate to be utilized or for you to identify with the number. But if there's no number, guess what? There's no number. So whether you have to answer the question about whether there is or is not a number, that you could actually challenge it and say, well, can you show me where you're authorized right now to ask for it? And we'll show you where employers are authorized. In fact, they're compelled by law, with the penalty coming at them, to solicit you for the number. They're not required to receive it. There's where people have the glitch. So that's it. Again, the last paragraph says they don't have the authority to administer or to answer any of these other questions. So now, but wait, there's more. But wait, there's more, folks. We're going to go to the next thing. Now, hopefully, take a break, get a glass of water or whatever you need to do. And, and we're gonna get into the Code of Federal Regulations is what I'm going to do. So the theme of the talk today is this letter from Social Security. Now, I don't know what page I'm on. I'm on page 822. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll way back up here. And I'm going to show you this Code of Federal Regulations. So you can see on the screen, you can get this online. this Code of Federal Regulations, and the code I'm looking for is Title or 26 CFR Code of Federal Regulations, Section 301.6724. It's a reasonable cause waiver. So an employer, though they've done a beautiful job asking you for a number, once after they've employed you and they're required to give you a form, then what happens? Is there a penalty if you say none? Is there? Actually, there isn't. So this is a huge, huge document here that I'm going to go through. So section, and you can look through all these sections, 301 point, and then it has a bazillion numbers. So I'm going to, what was it, 822? Try to go down to section or page 822 or somewhere thereafter here. So it's a huge, now why would they make it so hard to have you to be able to find answers to your questions? So here's, where are we at numbers? So this is 7,000. So we need 6724. What, 6722? Here we are. Yeah, it must be it because I've got some highlighting here. So let me back up. And here we are at 6724. Yes, we are. Okay, here we are. Look what it says, folks. It's called reasonable cause. And all of your employers are being told about these penalties if they don't do the following things. So if you look at section 67, 21, 22, 23, just like how huge this document is, the area we're going to look at, they're being told they're in trouble. They're going to have penalties for all kinds of things that they can do wrong, right? All the kind of things that they can get more money from these businesses besides the taxes that are owed. They can have all kinds of fees and fines, and they can shake them down for quite a lot of money. And that's what, that businesses are terrified of this group, the IRS, that goes around the collection agent and ruining business and tapping them with all these fees and create legal expenses to fight against all these accusations, all this kind of stuff. So that's why they're terrorized. So if they can just eliminate, never hire somebody who doesn't have a number, then there's a section here they don't have to worry about. They have to worry about, let's say, 1,444 other things, but not the 14,445th thing to worry about. Okay? Pardon me. Reasonable cause. So all these penalties for asking for information and passing it to the government. Reasonable cause, waiver of the penalty. General rule, penalty for failure relating to an information reporting requirement, right? They're asking you for information. They got to pass it to the IRS as defined in J. So J, I may or may not look at J. J is, you're thinking, why did we go to J? It was, in other words, if you got to report it, it's defined in J, stuff you need to report. And so it says failure, it's all those penalties are waived if the failure is due to reasonable cause and is not due to willful neglect. So you can't willfully neglect to apply for a Social Security number when there's no law requiring you to apply for a Social Security number. Reasonable cause defined. And then it says there's mitigating factors, and they have different sectors. Let's say the failure arose from events beyond filer's control as described in whatever. So there's different things. But I want you to look at it, this what it says. They give you, like, you have to establish either this or that. But look at these as it continues on, significant mitigating factors. The applicable mitigating factors include, but are not limited to. Just because it's not on the list, and they're not going to put on the list, they've never, ever, ever had an SSN and they don't want one. They're not going to put that on the list. But it's a no-brainer. This is not an exhaustive list here. It's giving them specifics that businesses deal with, but it's not limited to these things. So I highlighted this section here. Whoop. Oh, that was tough. I think this thing is so huge that when I move my mouse, it's moving a mountain. Yeah, look at this. Look at all those subsections of that previous thing. Events, certain actions of the payee or other person who's supposed to provide the information. If the payee doesn't give them a number, they're off the hook. right? And so we're going to show you what the employer has to do, and I'm going to just kind of just show you this stuff is in the Code of Federal Regulation. We're going to go to the IRS Pub, and then we're going to show you the form. And the form is, you got to see the form that says it's voluntary. But people go to the form and not understand why it's voluntary until we follow the yellow brick road. Actions of the other payee, the failure, let's say let me turn off this thing's asking me to highlight something. Actions of the payee or other person. In order to establish reasonable cause, we have to show either the failure resulted from the failure of the payee or other person required to provide information necessary for the filer to comply with the information reporting requirements, right? The filer must provide documentary evidence. Now, this is what needs to happen. You say, well, it's causing me more paperwork. No, it isn't. You give the person a W-4 form, right? And on the form, it says, don't send this to the IRS. You give them the W-4 form. It's a wages information, because Social Security is about wages, wage earners. And they fill it out, or an I-9 form or whatever it is, an information form. You give them the form. They fill it out. You don't send it to the IRS. You put it in your file. That employee, that payee, you put the document in the file. That's a solicitation. That's the reality of it. And they're going to have a pattern where they ask once, didn't get it. You ask a second time, a year in the next year, I guess calendar year or tax year, you ask them again. And then you put it in your file. So it's commanding people to use due diligence to solicit for the information, not to be coercive, not to hit them over the head, not to threaten to fire them, but to solicit the information, put it in their file. And when they're going to have to send a form, let's say tax reporting. We've withheld wages, or we've withheld FICA taxes for this person, and it's not going to have a Social Security number in it. That's all right. And maybe I'll talk about later the kind of things you can put in there. I'll tell you the kind of thing that the state of Virginia Attorney General's office told the local community college, that used to be called Thomas Nelson Community College, to put on a, what do you call the form you get? W-2, no, it wasn't a W-2, 1099. I was a contractor, and they sent me a 1099, and it said in the block, religious prohibition. I told them to put that in that block. The Virginia Attorney General told them to put that in the block. I got the I-9 for $5,000, no taxes taken out, and the term religious prohibition, I believe was, I've got that on my record. Now, you don't know the facts of what happened that caused that particular statement. Don't tell me. I'm not giving you like the silver bullet. Don't get yourself into trouble. There was a lot of paperwork that led to the point where the Attorney General is telling the local state college to do that with their paperwork, right? But the point is, there's no law requiring anybody to have a Social Security number to live or work in the United States. And you can be employed. And they can fill in forms and they can send it off to the IRS. And the IRS, depending on your status, may or may not harass you depending on your situation. Have a good time with that. So, okay, so of this section, special rules available of the waiver for the filer's failure relates to taxpayer. Okay. And then it goes into talking about responsible behavior. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to, we're going to go to IRS Pub 1586. Very important for employers, because what it does, it fleshes out this. If this particular thing about missing or incorrect taxpayer identification number is spelled out, the behaviors needed of an employer with regard to this is IRS Pub 1586. Now, I'm going to step away from this detailed treatise on this for a minute, because what I want to do, we'll go to IRS Pub 1586 here, but before I get into that in great detail, is I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you how I found out about this. A lady heard about me in court case that we had, and that was just most people didn't believe that it could actually happen. But I won a case. It was on this issue. And so somebody called me, and I'm a minister of the gospel. I was at the time at evangelism ministry, but periodically people call me for help. So she calls me. She says, my boss is an employer. Obviously, I'm working for a guy. He says he's a Christian. My husband and I have come to this conviction that we can't identify with a social security number. We know it's voluntary. We know we're not violating the law. We're obeying God. We're obeying man. But our employer, we're telling him the information about that it's voluntary, and he's telling me he has to fire me. So she went from identifying with a number to not identifying with a number, and she asked her employer to help her to kind of go along with this and participate. And so the guy, he was pretty upset about it, probably talked to his accountant, his lawyer, whatever. They were telling him, no, you got to get rid of this lady. She's not going to be able to sue you. And nobody wins an SSN case, and that's what I've been told by lawyers. And so nobody wins these SSN cases. Just fire him. She's not worth the trouble. Oh, yeah, but she's nice. She's doing great stuff. Just fire her. Just not worth the trouble. She chose this path. She chose that. So just, get rid of her. So she calls me on a Thursday, and she says, this is what's going on. And then my counsel was, my question, well, are you supposed to be working for this guy? Huh? Yeah, maybe. I mean, what's your husband say? I said, well, so why don't you tonight go talk to your husband and earnestly pray and get wisdom from God whether or not you're supposed to be working for this guy. Maybe this is a blessing, that there's something that you can do that you actually enjoy doing, maybe on your own spare time, that you can actually make at least the same amount of money or more. Just seek God's face and find out what's his will for you. So I didn't hear the result of that, but that's what she did. And she did tell me later that they did go off and pray that way, but she came back to work on Friday. I found out on Monday about her going back to work on Friday, and she went through her day, and the boss says, don't worry about cleaning up after work, getting your stuff. You got your little pictures on your cubicle or whatever. You can come in Monday and just get your stuff, but today will be your last day. So she has her last day. She goes through the weekend. She comes back on Monday, and she's coming in to pick up her stuff, and the boss comes in and says, what are you doing? Now, he was a little cheeky, right? He said, what are you doing? And she goes, well, I'm doing, it's obvious. I'm not, I'm fired. I'm taking all my stuff home. And he says, no, why would you think you were fired? Oh, and then she's, what are you talking about? So he tells her a story. Now she's praying. You realize she's praying. She's asking God for information, for wisdom, for relief, for help. Well, after she goes home from work, the boss, on Friday, the boss gets a call from an IRS agent who tells the boss about Pub 1586. Reasonable cause regulations, requirements for missing an incorrect name, whatever, TINs on information returns. The IRS agent, by the grace of God, gives the information to the employer. He goes, we've got you. We can continue this working relationship. I haven't heard from the woman since, or her husband. But at least I got a praise report about what happened, and I was really excited about it. But it also gave me access to this IRS publication, Reasonable Cause, Regulations, and Requirements. So you have the code. Well, you got the Constitution. You got God, right? You can't force somebody to do something involuntarily. You can't do it. To all of a sudden initiate this piece of number, this out of this, quasi-governmental program, this welfare benefit survivors disability benefit program. It's voluntary. It's kind of quasi-governmental, governmental sponsored bonus program, right? You can't compel the world to go into that, to suddenly make themselves a slave to this system. It's just, come on, guys, let's think about that. Either we're in this real constitutional government or we're not. So it sort of makes sense when you think about it. So it's going to be in the Constitution protected. So they have a statute that's set, and they have a Social Security Act, but it doesn't force anybody to do anything. It can't. As soon as it does, you could have it claimed as unconstitutional. So in the statute, the Social Security Administration says there's no law requiring it. It's true. There's no law requiring it. The IRS code has identification information. Yes, they want you to put a number on the form. Of course, I'll just let you know they never actually started doing it till the early 60s. So it's not an absolute compelling mandate, because since 1933 or whatever, or 1916, whenever they started the income tax, they didn't use an SSN. Even after 1933, after the institution of Social Security, they didn't use that number for your tax identification number. And in 1943, when the President Roosevelt said every agency shall use this number, the sole number, when he instituted that mess, it wasn't actually implemented till the 1960s. It's not a compelling interest of government. Numbering the people is a great desire, a great part of their lust, I'm sure. But it's not, as a matter of law, something that is their mission in life. Thus, let's go to reason. So that's your editorial from me to you. With love from me to you. That's the editorial. So reasonable cause. Let's see what this thing looks like. And I want to verify that it's properly on my screen in front of you. It certainly is. And now in front of me. Reasonable cause. Regulations. Remember, this started with there's no law requiring a Social Security number to live and work in the United States, or simply for the purpose of having one. If that's true, people aren't going to apply for it, and they're going to be able to work. Reasonable cause regulations, requirements for missing incorrect TINs. And whether it's here or in the Code of Federal Regulations, it explains that missing or the wrong one means missing. Okay, here we go. So page 8, it starts actions for missing TINs and incorrect TINs. So there's a difference between the missing and the incorrect on how they proceed. So I'm going to go down to page 8 of this lovely document. Back in the day, the previous form, I've got to tell you, the previous version of this on its page 11 of a previous version, one that's maybe 20 years old, expressly said if somebody's got a missing or incorrect TIN and they get a letter from the IRS saying, hey, wrong number, don't fire them. It said that, don't fire them. This version's cleaned up a little bit, and this all it does. It just says, here's the actions that you need to take for missing or incorrect TIN. It doesn't say fire the person, right? It has this chart. Initial solicitation. You must make a solicitation. And stick with me on this, because when we get to the form where you're going to solicit information, it's going to say it's voluntary, and it's going to tell the employer you're not allowed to ask for this until you've made an offer, till you've just looked at this person without looking their paperwork. You're dealing with them man to man, master to servant, and you establish this relationship, master-servant relationship. Okay, now fill in the form. Now the form is not supposed to interfere with that relationship. I've not seen that said anywhere. I'm just telling you, I believe what I'm saying is true. We'll see if we can get this stuff to people to inject this in their heads. Initial solicitation must be made at the time an account is opened. That would be a bank, by the way. Different discussion. Or a relationship established. That would be master-servant relationship. Unless the payer already has the payee's TIN and uses it for all accounts of the payee. Okay? So it means if, say, a bank opened a new account, they don't need to solicit. If a TIN is not received as a result of initial solicitation, the filer is required to make up to 2 annual solicitations until the TIN is obtained. That means up till 2 until it is obtained. Doesn't mean you're going to obtain it. You're just going to stop at 2. There's no other requirement. Try it once, hey, did I get that right? And then, so that's missing TIN. That's no Social Security number. If you go to, the Social Security thing highlighted or cited, code 26 USC section 6109 talks about that for the individual, the SSN is the person's TIN. Okay, so that's where the word TIN means SSN. First annual solicitation must be made if a TIN is not received as a result of the, so you should have a query initially, then you do an annual solicitation, so that's one time before two or more witnesses. One time is when you meet them and you fill in the stuff. 1 year later, ask again. Another, and then it talks about the details of what if you ask in December, should you ask in January, whatever. And then it talks about a second annual solicitation. That's it. So missing TIN. Complete initial solicit. So it goes into different examples, but it all comes down to the same thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the actual form. The form itself. Where is this silly form? There's a publication. That's I-9. Oh, am I not showing this on my screen? Oh, you know what I didn't? I didn't show you. Here I've been talking about this whole time. Yeah, did I do it? No, I didn't. Okay, I didn't actually turn on I need a producer. So here's the SSA letter. Here is the Code of Federal Regulations. I have totally ruined this wasted your time. Code of Federal Regulations, a good thing I read something, but I've done a horrible job of really feeding you the information. So here's IRS Pub 1586. At least you saw that, right? Now let's go to I-9 Employment Eligibility Form. Maybe I did. I can't remember if I messed up or not. Hopefully I didn't. But here's the I-9 Eligibility Form, and I love this thing. It's great. Instructions for Form I-9 Employment Eligibility Verification. In fact, there was I can't think of the acronym, but I think it was part of the GATT Treaty, and they had this worker kind of thing, make sure that there's no fraud in the tax system among many countries, and so it really pushed along further this coercion, making employers believe that they're on the hook to really harass people over this. And what if somebody has a religious conviction? Just hypothetically. I mean, did you see the little thing about 666 in the SSA letter? What if somebody just goes, what? 666? I can't do 666. And then they find out that it's voluntary, and they go, oh, it's voluntary. Oh, good. But then everybody thinks, oh, we're not allowed to let you have a job because of 666. We're not allowed to let you have a profession because of 666. I know somebody who's talked to, I can't even tell you the details. Can't tell you the details. I know a lot of people have been told, no, they can't do it. And suddenly their employer or their certification agency, I was a soccer referee. I had to get certified. That would be an occupation, right? Occupational license or certification. And they've got to fill out reporting forms to the IRS. And I said, I can't do it. And guess what? What do we do? I said, you're going to tell me I can't be a referee? You're really going to tell me I can't be a referee over this? And I showed them the paperwork. I showed them information about this, and they sent in the stuff. And guess what? Nothing happened. Nobody got in trouble. It's a free country. It's a land of the home. It's a home of the free, land of the free, and a home of the brave. If it's the land of the brave, right? If you're willing to be brave, you're going to be free. You're not brave. Purpose of Form I-9. So it tells about the purpose. Let's see what the purpose is. I don't know. I haven't read this part. Employers and employees must complete their respective sections. You can complete the section, but sometimes completing it is putting something other than a social security number. This form used to say on it, on an older version, I actually saw it, if there's no number, put the term N/A, meaning not applicable. It used to say it on the information form. Sometimes, people find out about that, and it basically pulls the curtain back. You see the guy behind the wizard behind the curtain. So, employers and employees must complete their respective form. The form is used to document verification of identity and employment authorization of each new employee, both U.S. citizen and non-citizen, hired after November 6, 1986 to work in the United States. All right. So an employee, a person who performs labor services in the United States for an employer in return for wages or other remuneration. The term employee does not include, this is interesting, other individuals, okay, independent contractors, domestic employment, isn't that something? An employer, person, entity who's directly, indirectly in the interest, who engages the services of labor and employee to be performed in the United States for wages or other remuneration. Good. And we won't get into authorized representatives. So employees must complete and sign Section 1 of Form I-9. No later than, now this sounds a little weird, but I want you to see the details here. No later than the first day of employment. In other words, you come into work, by the end of the day, you fill in Section 1. Not before the day, but that date. Employees may complete Section 1 before the first day of employment, but cannot, now listen to this. This is it. Look, I should have highlighted this. You can't fill in the form asking for an SSN until before acceptance of an offer of employment. You can't fill in look what it says. You can't fill in Section 1 until there's an offer and receiving an agreement between the parties, master-servant relationship. Until that happens, you're not allowed to fill in the form. Employers, to keep you from discriminating over some weird little paperwork issue, you're supposed to determine whether you want to have a working relationship. And once you establish the relationship, then, and you have your United States employer filled out a form saying, I'd like to be a U.S. employer when I grow up. Please give me a U.S. employer ID number. And you identify now, I identify as a United States employer. Once you do that, then, and you have a master-servant relationship, then, employer, you're required to fill forms about your responsibilities toward your servant. But you've got to have the relationship first. You don't qualify somebody on whether they're going to fill in the form a certain way. This should be a paradigm, guys. This is reality. This is old school relationship. This is pre-IRS, pre-civil contract goofiness. It's just reality with relationship reality. And if you choose to have a relationship with somebody who's highly regulated, well, then once you have that relationship, you're going to have a lot of paperwork to do. All employees must make the instructions for Form I-9, let's see what it says. Completing I-9, okay. Ensure that the employee completes Section 1, that's the employers. Must have, employers must give the instructions of the I-9 to the employer, have them fill out Section 1. But let's look at this. Employee completes Section 1 no later than the first day of employment. This is where it's going to tell us that giving an SSN is voluntarily. I picked up the wrong form. I think I opened the instructions and not the form. All employees must provide their legal name. Now look what you must do. If the thing, the SSN, is not in the must column, we must not have to do it. All employees must provide their current legal name, complete address, and date of birth. If other fields do not apply, leave them blank. What do we do if other fields do not apply? Leave them blank. If there's no social security number, leave it blank. When completing the name fields, enter your current legal name, any last names you've previously used, including hyphens, etc. Okay, that's enter it in the last name field, then enter unknown in the first name field. If you don't know your own name, that's great. Now watch this. Watch this. Providing your 9-digit social security number in the social security number field is voluntary. It's going to give an unless here, but you're going to find out even in that unless doesn't apply. Providing your number, unless you're e-verify, in a field is voluntary. Did you hear that? It's voluntary. Because guess what? Even if you have a social security number, what's the purpose of the Social Security number as far as the Social Security Administration goes? And I've got a letter they sent me. Explain. This is so we can keep track of the money that's spent on your behalf in our records to know how much benefit you could qualify for. All right? I'll keep my own records, and I will mail them to myself, and I will keep them in my safe, and they'll have the postal mark on it for the last 40 years, and I'll take them in a box. I'll take them down to Social Security Administration. I'm going to swear, and I'll give an affidavit and say, I've been keeping these records ever since. You're going to help me open these envelopes. This is what my benefit is. You can do your own work. You don't need them to do the keeping of records for you. It's for your benefit, supposedly. Right? So, but look what it says. Providing it is voluntary unless your employer is an E-Verify person. But it turns out when you go down to the E-Verify thing, turns out it's still okay. It's still, you can still leave the form blank, and you're going to see what I mean here. Employer review and verification. Let's see. I think so. I've got to find the E-Verify section as I'm scanning here. Non-citizen documentation, employer review. Enter the information, documentation. Now the bad thing is I told you I was going to get the form, but at least you saw, and I can get the form open here shortly. Yeah, here it is. Employer for E-Verify. Here we are. E-Verify. E-Verify users use Form I-9 to confirm employees' employment eligibility. For more information, go to E-Verify, right? For employees or employees with participate in E-Verify. Now, an employer, I've heard of people being turned down because, oh, they E-Verify and we can't verify you without a number. Not true. For employees and employers who participate in E-Verify, you must provide your Social Security number and Social Security number field in Section 1. If your Social Security number is none, it doesn't say you must go get a Social Security number. It says you must if you've got one, right? It doesn't say you must have one. It doesn't say provide a that is yours. If none is it, you say none. All zeros. I think on the passport form in block 5, if you don't have an SSN, you put all zeros. Look it up. You must provide your Social Security number if you have applied for. Now here's a caveat here. And there's a SSN case, Bowen versus Roy, that talks about making exceptions for religious reasons or technical reasons, but not religious reasons, etc. In other words, if they've got an exception for one reason, you can't deny the exception for the other. It's just if the nature of your situation is what it is what it is. You just document it. If you have applied for it but not yet received your Social Security number, you should leave the field blank until you receive the number. So can somebody without a number E-Verify? Yes, you certainly can. So the employer has an option clearly to leave the number blank in the box even when they're E-Verifying. It's true. So what the Social Security Administration said back in 2003 by Charles Mullen, Office of Public Inquiries. There's no law that requires anybody to get a SSN in order to live or to work in the United States or simply for the purpose of having one. It's true. If you have applied for it but haven't received it, leave it blank. But people go, they like inferences, but that means you haven't applied for it. Good. Thank you. When did you become the SSN police? Show me where you, in this whole thing, Code of Federal Regulations, the tax code, where are you, the employer, the SSN police? You're just supposed to do the solicitation and document what you discover. That's it. That's your love your neighbor as yourself duty. Providing your email address, etc., etc., etc. So, a recap, my friends. Let me look at at my stream here. I wonder if it's really streaming. And see if anybody's written any comments. So, yeah, that's me. It's on there. I don't see any comments in the chat. So I'm going to wrap it up. So I'm going to get back to my large picture. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. There's no law. Let me get to the SSA letter here and get rid of my little wonderful face here. And I'm going to do a review here just to remember that that's what we're all about in this discussion. The Social Security Act does not require a person to have a Social Security number to live and work in the United States, nor does it require a Social Security number simply for the purpose of having one. And then they go on and explain, oh, wait a minute, everybody else has these reasons for doing a Social Security number, and then they mislead you, and then they finally say in this last thing, the Social Security Administration has no authority to interpret or to enforce the law as it applies to programs that we do not administer. But their duty to interpret has to do with the Social Security Act and the Social Security number. They say there's no law that requires anybody to have a Social Security number to live and or work, whether or not they've got taxes that are owed as a result of their duties and employment and other things. So that's it. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share, all that kind of stuff. It just turns out, they've got the little robot algorithms and all that kind of stuff. I'm not generating. I got some good information. And there's people out there that need it. So if you know somebody that needed this, and you're not believing me, read the forums. Read the forums. I had to read the forums. So that's it. Thank you. God bless you. And sayonara. Wait. But wait, before we go, like I said, like, subscribe, share. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with some outgoing blues. All right. This is Nobody's Fool Blues. And I hope you enjoy that. Yeah, that's it. So